It doesn't have to go, like, I mean, we've been through that in the 90s, we knew better.
Okay. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the July 26th meeting of the Albany Planning and Zoning Commission. You start the meeting, please, by joining us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And a roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kent,
Here.
Commissioner Minotti,
Here.
and Vice Chair Donaldson.
Here.
And just for the members of the audience and the commission, Eric Eason-Fields is absent this evening, and Megan Jennings is en route, and we expect her to arrive later in the meeting.
All right, great. All right, the next thing is ex parte communication disclosures. Anyone have anything to report?
No, nothing. No.
No. Okay. All right. So tonight we have a consent calendar that's pretty large, a number of items on it. So with a consent calendar, anyone in the audience can pull an item from the consent calendar if they would like us to open a public hearing on that. And any member of the commission can pull an item from the consent calendar if they would like to have further discussion of that. Otherwise, if things are not pulled from the consent calendar, we will approve them all in one motion. The items on the consent calendar tonight include the minutes from July 12th, from the P&Z meeting of July 12th. The design review for a new detached garage at 504 Curtis. Design review for a second-story addition at 821 Cornell is on the consent calendar. And conditional use permit and parking waiver for Su Yan's Chinese Learning Center at 850A Talbot is on the consent calendar. And that's it. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like us to have public hearing on any of these items or would like to address the commission on any of these items that I've just mentioned? Yes, go ahead. On 821 Cornell, okay, we'll pull that from the consent calendar. All right, that's good. Any commissioners who like to pull anything from the consent calendar?
I had a comment on 504 Curtis.
On 504 Curtis, okay, we'll have just a comment on that then, so you probably don't need a full public hearing on it.
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, anything else?
Hi, sorry I'm late. Did anyone already pull 5-4, the conditional use permit and parking waiver for the Chinese Learning Center?
No.
Okay, I have some questions about that one.
Pull that
Yes.
one, okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so that leaves the minutes from the last meeting. And then actually, Val, why don't we, if you just have a brief item on 504 Curtis, let's, can we bring that, let's try to deal with that now if there's just a question or something like that.
My comment on that one had to do with the garage door itself. I know on the item later on, 53821 Cornell, we did ask them to consider changes to the garage door more consistent with the design guidance we have to kind of make it not look so massive, a two-car garage. I would like to see something similar on the 504 Curtis one. Otherwise, I think the garage is fine. It's just a design review issue.
Yeah. Personally, I had a similar thought, and then I decided that I'm okay with it as it is because it's really not visible from the street at all in the back there. So I don't know what you want to do. Maybe we should, if you want to make a motion on that separately, let's do that.
Okay.
And then, okay. All right. So that leaves the consent calendar with the minutes from July 12th.
I'd move approval of the minutes.
Okay. And everything else we will be discussing. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. The consent calendar, what's left of it, and which is the minutes from July 12th, have been approved. All right. 504 Curtis. Val, do you want to make a motion on that? With the,
Yeah, I don't actually have a specific design treatment other than I would like to see the garage door more consistent with the design guidelines that Albany has established.
So in identifying a different aesthetic, are you interested in the, not so much carriage door, but like 2 single car doors and a separating beam, or something that has more treatment on the actual facade and keeping it a 2-car door?
I think the latter, more of a treatment that makes it look
Okay.
like.
So then I think you could include a condition that the garage door itself is fine to be for a double car, but that the design should be modified to be, I guess, more consistent with the design guidelines. And I don't know if you want to add more specificity, like a window detail or some sort of other treatment.
I guess I was looking to Eric to provide that, but since he's not here,
yeah. Well, I think we could, I think you could delegate it to staff and to be consistent with, more closely consistent with the design guidelines.
that sounds good.
So I think that would be fine.
If you're willing, I'd move 5-2 for the new detached garage at 504 Curtis with the addition that delegated to staff, the design of the garage door is more consistent with the design guidelines that Albany has.
Okay. Is there a second?
Well,
I just want-
before that, I,
Further discussion?
oh, I just wanted to see whether anyone is, if the applicant is here and had anything, if you wanted to respond or say anything about it. And
If you want to
so-
respond, yeah, should come up to the microphone because the meeting's being recorded and.
Okay, so you're recommending 2 separate garage doors?
No,
not
that was
necessarily.
considered, but not really. Single garage door is okay. We often prefer a double, but in this case, a single would be okay. Our design review guidelines sort of focus on the sort of barn door style look. And that can be done with a double garage that has a sort of a full barn door on it, just by selecting a different door. And/or there's a picture of one there behind you that's in front of us tonight for another project.
Does that roll up or does that swing out?
That's a roll-up door.
It's a roll-up.
That's a roll-up?
It's a roll-up. And it don't have to swing out.
Yeah, I have in my portfolio some really nice cedar doors that look like carriage doors that roll up.
Perfect.
They're really nice, yet they're a little more, they're more costly.
Yeah,
And that's something I'd have to discuss with my client, but they're beautiful.
yeah.
They look like old carriage doors, and they have like an arched window eyebrow, so to speak, and you can leave them natural if you wanted and just leave them cedar.
The other thing that this door has on it, look at there, are some windows to just add visual interest rather than just a whole blank panels. And that is also an option that might work fine for us.
Do I need to submit?
What we're
Example?
going to do with this motion, we're going to delegate the review to staff. So you bring it into staff and go over a design with them that sort of works for you and your client and the staff. And I think that'll be adequate. The staff's very familiar with the design review guidelines and what we expect. Yeah,
Wanted to ask another question also,
sure.
and this has nothing to do with the design of the door. I mean, does that, once we pick that door, does the garage door itself, the entry door on the side, need to match that? Probably so, no? With a glass, a piece of glass in it? I mean, this is
No,
up
let's
to the
take a look
client.
at that. Not necessarily, I'd say.
I can submit some pictures if you'd like. I have some pictures from my past doors.
I just had a question. Is the garage door something that will be visible from the street? It wasn't really clear to me. It seems like
Let's
it's
just put it this way.
set back
If the
and-
street's here, like right here, and the garage is down the driveway, I would say a good 50 feet. And the garage will sit like, if this is the street, the garage will sit like this.
Like
So you
perpendicular.
could possibly, if you look hard enough, you could see the garage door.
But it's not.
It's
not
not
really
readily
visible, yeah.
visible.
Okay.
It's not readily visible at
Thanks.
all. And it sits behind the building, actually.
And the door you're talking about sounds like it wouldn't be
Behind,
visible at all. Yeah.
behind the garage.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
No.
No, I think you can work with staff, and I think that you can work it out just fine with staff. And I really don't think we should make it very difficult or have very high standards here, because it's essentially not visible at all from the public street.
Yeah, I like to do really nice work, and for my clients, and I like it to look nice.
That's
So
great.
that-
That's great.
So that's kind of
Okay.
where I'm at.
Okay,
Is that it?
that's good. Thank
I'll
you.
just go back to my seat.
Okay. Yeah. You know what, we don't have your name or anything. Why don't you fill out a speaker card in the back and then bring it up to the podium here, so we can have your name for the minutes? Be great, thanks. Okay. Let's see, so where were we? There was a
We have a
motion
motion and no second, Jeff.
and no second. Does someone want to second the motion?
What's the motion?
The motion is to approve the project with the change that delegated to staff, that there will be modifications to the garage door more consistent with the Albany residential design guidelines.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Sorry, Doug,
Aye.
do we have to have public comment?
Yeah, you can provide an
pull it up.
Okay, I can open it up. Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the commission on this item? 504 Curtis. Okay. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and call for the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And there no one opposed. It's been approved. Okay, so if you're here for 504 Curtis, your project's been approved. There is a 14-day appeal period, and after that time, if no one appeals, then you can come in and get your building permit and proceed. And good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is design review for a second-story addition at 821 Cornell. Let's see, why don't we I think we should probably have a little staff report on this, or a summary of, I missed the last meeting and the earlier discussions on it myself. But I have reviewed the record. And what's appropriate here? Do you want
Yeah, we can give
to
you,
just talk about changes or any new information?
yeah, we can give you just a quickie rundown of where this was. This was presented to the full commission at the last hearing on July 12th. At that time, the commission continued it to a date certain of July 26th, pending some design revisions, including the garage door, some modifications to the rear French doors and deck landing, and then also some modifications to the landscape plan. And so the architect made those revisions, which is before you tonight. In fact, this is the garage door revision, which warranted quite a bit of discussion at the last hearing. We have other elevations that we can show you, but that's kind of the project scope in a nutshell. And you received some correspondence within the last hour from adjacent property owners regarding this project.
You say there have been communications. Okay. Okay.
And can I ask a
go ahead.
question of staff? From staff's perspective, were there any changes in the landscape plans that were submitted? I know that was also the topic of a lot of conversation.
Yeah, there were some modifications that were made to the landscape plan, as I understand it. And we can let the applicant speak to the specifics of that.
Okay. Okay, I have that same question. Anything else? Any other questions? No. All right, then I'd like to open up a public hearing before we move further on 821 Cornell. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this project? Sure. Feel free to come up to the microphone And when you, at some point, we need a speaker card from you so we can.
Yeah,
You've
we're going to
already
have
done
the applicant speak first. This is not the applicant.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
well, okay, that's good. Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Yep.
Great.
My name is Maura Baldwin, and I'm the landscape architect on the project, so I'm
Okay.
the one who addressed all the landscape issues. Should I just review it or answer questions, or, anyway, so one of the
Maybe
issues.
you can just tell us how you responded to the
Okay.
comments from the last.
Do you have a image?
It's loading.
Okay,
It should be
thanks.
coming
Bear
up.
with us.
Thank you. So I think the major issue is screening, and, but there are some other issues. And the suggestions were to address it with, one idea was to use a trellis, but since this new sort of small deck is very low to the ground, a trellis would only be 8 feet high perhaps, and it would not address the sight lines from the adjacent property to the second-story master bedroom windows. So another thought was to add large canopy screening trees, and more sort of in the midway through the backyard, and so that's what I did. So they should work to address the sightlines from the adjacent building, and they're deciduous, so they'll screen the view and the sightlines, but they'll also allow light through in the winter. Then on the north side, there are masses of existing fruit trees on the north and east sides, so those do and will continue to create the needed screening on those sides. And I added some larger shrubs on the south side, larger evergreen shrubs, which should grow above the fence and also screen from the south side. And another comment was to reduce the hardscape. The reason there was originally such a large amount of hardscape was to provide play area for kids to have ball and bike play instead of having lawns, since we're all concerned about reducing lawns, and the clients weren't interested in having lawn. So I did go ahead and reduce the hardscape and then add a kind of between it and the edible area, the orchard area, I added a sort of a low maintenance, low mow, low water use meadow kind of play area to extend the play area. And let's see, what else is there? I also noted that on the other side of the property, there's a large existing incense cedar, which if that were allowed to grow its horizontal branches between the fence line and the existing canopy, that would be the quick and instant way to create screening on the east side. And then the mulberry trees. So the comment was to not have mulberry trees because they cause allergies. And so I've taken out the mulberry tree, but just to note that it's male mulberries that have pollen that create allergies, and this was actually a fruiting female tree. So, but it's gone, and and all the other, and there's so many fruit trees in the garden that I think it's fine. And I think that's it. So.
Okay,
Did you have follow-up questions, or?
okay. Any other questions? We're having trouble loading the landscape plan. It must be a huge file or something. This is, yeah, I have a printed copy of it here.
We also have a large
And you have a
size hard
full-size
copy.
copy of it
that's-
there, yeah. Okay.
More, I have a couple questions. Do you think the robinia is going to shade out the fruit trees?
No, that's why I chose robinia, because it's really open and light and airy, has an open branching structure, and the leaves are really small and fine, but that's why I didn't originally have trees in there. So if there were a need for a canopy screening tree, I think that's the best choice I came up with.
And did your original plan, you took the fig out and then you're
The
leaving?
fig is existing. It's a
Right,
huge.
but you were going to remove it and then you decided to keep it?
No,
It was always
there.
in, okay.
It was smaller in the graphic that I originally had, and so I made it more accurate size.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Any other questions on the landscape plan? No? All right,
Thank you.
that's good. Is there anyone else from the applicant's side who'd like to address the commission on changes that have been made or any other further information?
Good evening. My name is Basilia Macias. I'm the architect on the project.
Okay.
We did take to heart the comments from the committee regarding the garage door and put together a graphic here to show you what we are proposing to simulate sort of the barn door style in a sectional garage door still, with also the addition of some vertical lights up at the top there on the top panel.
Right.
Also, we wanted to illustrate that we did propose a trellis to be part of the overall front facade of the project, and working with the landscaper, we've proposing potato vines to be the thing that will be climbing around there so that they're evergreen and produce a nice flower. So, and that was always in our minds because it's something that the client really, really enjoyed about what he has now. So I just wanted to illustrate in this graphic that the garage door, even though it is recessed, we did take some time to kind of fine tune it a little bit.
Okay, good. Any other questions from the applicant? No? All right, good, thank you. If we have other questions, we'll call you back. Great. Okay, now, public hearing. Do you have speaker
Yes,
cards?
we do have one speaker card.
Okay.
For Linda Haymaker.
Okay, great.
Good evening to Planning and Zoning Commissioners and to the Albany City staff and to Albany residents. My name is Linda Haymaker. My background is landscape architecture, environmental design. We made, about half a dozen comments about the landscape plan primarily 2 weeks ago. And I'm glad that the landscape designer's here tonight because I think some things were lost in translation. And it didn't seem like all of these issues were addressed very substantively. So I would like to just bring these up briefly in the same order from the first letter, so hopefully it'll be most logical. We had asked on the, most of my questions and concerns are about the landscape architecture and the immediate environment between the homes. But I did have one concern, and so did my neighbors, about the double doors that were coming directly out of the back. Because it's such a big home, it's almost tripling the square footage, and it's going to be the biggest house on the block. So basically, if you're looking at it sideways, there's a big flat horizontal, and there's a big, huge vertical. And we would like to have that broken up a little bit, which they seem to be trying to do. But on the double doors that are coming directly out the back, on the existing porch that they have, both of their porches, front and back, enter at right angles rather than head-on into the yard. And we asked if they could maybe put a small porch around it to possibly go to the side, and they said that they would consider that, or something to mitigate this direct head-on approach that would, be much more intrusive to our sense of privacy and enclosure and noise issues and things like that. And I didn't see that anything was done about that. It seems like on the deck there, if there was some problem about doing any kind of a porch enclosure or an enclosure, maybe they could put something on the east side of the deck that they have, directly opposite the doors, that was about 8 feet with maybe trellis on top of that, so that every time they come in and out, we as neighbors are not directly looking at them and feel sort of intruded upon. So that would be the same suggestion that we had last time, that they might address that a little bit rather than not. And we didn't feel that they did take that into consideration. Then the rest of my issues are about, a big issue was about the terrace size. And from the plans that were submitted, it looked as though what they had proposed last time was a very large rock terrace. But when I looked at the revisions, what they wrote was that they had proposed a lawn and that we didn't like the lawn. We would love a lawn because a lawn is much quieter than rock and hard surface. So if that could be put back in the original plan as a lawn, that would muffle a great deal of sound in the back, reverberating off of these large surfaces. We asked that they could reduce the terrace size, and actually, the net result, because of this thing where they're putting in now a large rock terrace, and they say they want to have bikes and ball games back there, that's a high-impact use, and it's a very noisy use, so that if they could play with their balls and things like that on a lawn, it would be much, much quieter for the rest of us than if they were putting some kind of a hard surface in there. So that's why I'd like to say we did have some confusion when we read it, and we did not read it as a lawn, but a lawn would be far preferred to a rock terrace. Also, the other main concern was the very back fence line on the east. This is all on the east side where we adjoin on Talbot Avenue. We asked that they would try to grow up their beautiful fig tree a little bit more, which it sounds like you're going to do, and also to put some adjoining trees next to the fig tree, which is in the middle of the fence, and something on both sides, all of which would be evergreen, to act as a screen and a privacy and enclosure. Because now we have beautiful enclosure on all the gardens. We love it, and it's been very easy as everything, especially behind them, has been 1 story and 1 story. Now that they're going so high, we feel that it's an appropriate scale for them to go up to 15 to 20 feet rather than stay down really, really low, and their plantings are extremely low. They call for the pomegranates and, let's see, you have the plan up here? I'll see if I can find it in my notes. The pineapple guava, which are very low, they get maybe 5 feet tall. That's not 15 to 20 feet tall.
Okay.
So we feel that the scale is still not concomitant to the scale of the house.
Okay.
And my other concern would be the trees that they did spec in there are robinia, some varietal form. I happened to look this up. It grows in zones 4 to 8. It does not grow in zone 10. And so it wouldn't even perform there. And what I have seen in the areas where it has grown, it's a weed tree, it has intrusive roots and so on. Not really the best choice, even if it would grow there. So we'd like to see them do maybe a similar planting, but not quite as tall. That tree could get maybe 40 foot. It won't, but it could, as drawn out on their plan. We would like to see something that would be more like 21 to 28 feet, which is the height of the windows that we would like to have the views and the sight lines screened, and not really, really high so that we're already losing a tremendous amount of sky by the structure. We don't want to lose more sky than is necessary. So I think that the 21 to 28 feet, one side's 21 feet, the other side's 28 feet, where the dormers go there, to that scale, not way higher. So that was 3 basic areas. The intermediate area, which we asked a couple of strategically planted trees, say a Japanese maple or a magnolia or something deciduous or evergreen that could be planted in there to obscure the sight lines and create some privacy in back. And the evergreen hedge in the back, which has not been addressed. Plus, and this was a miscommunication on everyone's part here, going back to this lawn idea rather than putting in a lot more hardscape, which would be much, much, much noisier. So glad to see that they have done some of the issues. My only other issue was they had spec'd in coastal live oak for their street trees in front, which is a beautiful tree, but way too huge for a teeny tiny parking strip. They do have there another California native, which is Catalina Island ironwood. It's a beautiful tree. It seems to be doing well. Maybe they could leave those there. They're a nice asset to the street, and since they're tearing pretty much everything down, it'd be nice to preserve a little bit of what's left there that does work and create a little bit of continuity. So I won't take
Okay.
up any more of my time, and
Okay.
my comments are in my
Yeah.
notes.
I've been generous with your time, so that's good. That's fine. Okay. Let's see. I think I have a question for you, actually, myself.
Okay.
So you live behind this lot. You're on the east side of this lot, and your rear fence abuts their rear fence. What kind of
have-
landscaping do you have in your backyard?
I have 15 to 20-foot screening because my neighbor's in back, and my house is 2-story. So that's what we did there, and it works great.
And your screening won't screen
No,
your
not-
view from this house?
No, it'll screen a little portion of it. They are also taking out their garage, which is in my corner, which has created a
Oh, so
great,
you partially,
I'm partially screened.
you're partially screened.
My neighbors in back who were at the last meeting and unable to make it tonight were very concerned they are directly in back. And there was no
Right.
screening put in their lot.
Okay. No.
So I'm concerned about a few of the plant choices because I want whatever they do to thrive there. I'm hoping that they can put some pittosporums in the corners because there's a lot of different species of pittosporums that do real well around here, so there's plenty
Sure.
of things to choose from.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, I think that's good, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great. Now, is there anyone else who'd like to address the commission tonight on this project?
I
821
don't have
Cornell?
any other speaker cards.
Pardon me?
I don't have any other
No more speaker cards? Okay. All right, then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Who'd like to sort of start a discussion following up on this? Any other additional thoughts?
Well, a couple is, I think existing, it's a concrete patio, right? There's a big swath of concrete in the backyard.
Existing, yeah, now.
So it's not to change it to a flagstone patio, and according to what I'm looking at here in the existing proposed, is not, you're not adding really more hardscape than what's currently there. That's one of my thoughts. I wasn't, and the other one was, well, yeah, that's right. From the old plan, they did cut back the hardscape, you're right. Looks like they added a kind of a crescent moon of
Yeah.
lawn in there. Yeah, you're right. But looking at the current plan, it's the same.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
okay, that's good. The other issue, the Sunset has Robinia as 1 to 20, zones 1 to 24. And so it's a pretty versatile plant. And Robinia's planted a lot around here. I wouldn't discount it as
Yeah.
a successful tree. I guess that's room for debate there, but that's a couple of my thoughts offhand. And the street tree, I wasn't quite sure why the Catalinas are being removed. Maybe Maura can flesh out, is there a reason?
So the driveway is going to be relocated
The driveway has to be relocated.
Oh,
since the garage is going away.
Got it.
And as to the issue of the street tree, that's something that gets worked out with the city arborist based on a
Yeah.
site visit and his assessment of the site conditions.
Yep.
So that's something, there may be a species called out, but that may be subject to change depending on
Oh.
his
Correct,
determination.
has to be
I
on
see
the-
that
Has to be
now.
a city species and worked out
It
with
has to be
city
from the
arborist,
approved
yeah.
street tree
Yeah.
list.
Right, all right.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, any other thoughts on?
Oh, the rear exit, it's hard for me to follow the logic that someone can't have exit, because if you look at the layout of the plan, they have the kitchen and the dining room, and then a big double door that opens out into the backyard. It's quite nice. And the fact that that would somehow intrude on if there's a fence between the yards, right? And then if we have the screening too, I can't see how that's going to really going to impact the privacy issues of the person on the other lot. And if it does, maybe they have to kind of chip in on screening, but, that's pretty common to just exit out your back house. So that's a thought on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. Megan, you have something?
Oh, yeah, I'll just be brief. And so I was here at the last hearing and heard from some of the neighbors and encouraged the applicant to listen to some of their concerns and incorporate those. And I'm pleased to see that you did make some revisions, trying to accommodate the neighbors' requests. And, I'm excuse me, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks, and understanding that maybe not everyone is going to be happy with it, but I'm glad to see the movement on it, and that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Yeah. I think I have a question for staff, and maybe this was discussed at the last meeting I missed or not. I want to find out, is there going to be a change in the street? Will we have a net loss of any street parking due to the driveway relocation, or will it just be a trade-off?
It'll effectively be a trade-off.
Yeah, okay.
Because right now.
Just want to verify that.
Yeah, it'll be a trade-off.
Yeah, okay. So there'll still be the same number of street spaces on that block of Cornell?
Yes.
What this is done, okay. That satisfies one concern I had there. All right. Okay, any other comments?
I just want to say, like last time, I thought the design was very attractive, and I'm glad was happy they made the change on the garage door. I think it's a much more welcoming entrance, and I kind of want to listen to any comments that Chris might have related to the landscaping in the back. I'm glad they made some movements to address the neighbor's concern.
Yep. All right. I think I'll like you. This is my first time reviewing it, but I do think the overall design is very attractive. I'm pleased with the garage door modifications, very pleased with that. I really like the front facade, and I think it'll actually be a big improvement over what's there right now. And I'm glad that you're keeping that trellis element in the new front. I applaud that. I like the one you have there right now. And I too will go with the landscaping plan. I've listened to the neighbors' concerns about it, and I hear them, but I don't completely agree with your fears or your anxieties about how they'll have adverse effects here from your perspective. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, but I can't hear you. But anyway, I think I support the landscape plan as it's been modified, and I can't support modifying the back doors. I don't think that'll be a problem for you, having the east-facing French doors coming out of the building. I really don't think that'll be a problem. And we see that all the time, and I think that it'll provide adequate access to their backyard, and I wouldn't want to force them to change the plan to have a 90-degree entrance. I don't think that much would be gained from that. I'd also urge that the neighbors to the east, be it you apparently already have tall plantings, but I've done it in my own lot, and that is plant the back of my fence as sort of a defensive move to get plantings that shield my views. I had great luck with Prunus carolinus intention to block the street light a block away from my backyard that was irritating me. And after 4 or 5 years, worked fine. I haven't seen the street light now for many, many years. So a lot can be done on the rear lot line if you're worried about the construction that's happening to the rear of you. And you can do a lot of plantings on your own as a defensive measure to provide a visual barrier that's very, very effective. And I think that's what would be appropriate here. So, so I don't know, with that, any other further discussion? If not, I'll call for a motion.
I would, I need to look at what the motion is, but I move to approve the design review for a second-story addition at 821 Cornell.
Okay?
I would
And,
second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No one's opposed. Okay, so the project's been approved as designed with the modified landscaping plan. You should know there's a 14-day appeal period, but if no one appeals the project to the city council, then our decision is final at the end of 14 days, and you can prepare your final plans and come in for building permits after that time. Great, thank you very much. The next item, I think we're still on consent calendar, is, I believe it is 850A Talbot, a conditional use permit and a parking waiver for Su Yun's Chinese Learning Center. Let's see, how should we want a staff report?
We'll give you a brief staff report
Okay.
and then an opportunity for the applicant to address you.
Okay.
The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit and a parking waiver for Su Yun's Chinese Learning Center at 850A Talbot. The subject site is a 5,164 square foot lot with an existing commercial structure at the front, which is Unit A, and an existing residence at the rear of the property, Unit B, built in 1946. The applicant is proposing a change of use for Unit A from an existing yoga studio to a Chinese language daycare center for children in grades K through 5. The school year, the applicant is proposing hours of operation to be Monday through Friday from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. during the school year, and Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the summer. An outdoor play area is proposed in the front yard area and includes an accessible ramp. The existing architecture is proposed to remain for Unit A and Unit B, and the exterior changes are not proposed. A parking waiver is required to waive 4 of the required 6 off-street parking spaces.
Okay. And is the applicant present? And would you like to, why don't you come up and tell us a little bit about your project and what your objectives are? And okay, great.
Why don't I go ahead first? So my name is Kesuke Toifuku. This is my wife, Michelle Ling. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm a long-time, we're both long-time Albany residents. We have 3 children, 2 are attending Marin. I myself actually attended Cornell and Albany Middle and Albany High. So we, as parents, we felt and we found a need for after-school care, but specifically a Chinese immersive program. And so we kind of put our heads together and we thought a bit about what we wanted to do, and this was really the kind of the genesis of the idea, to find a location. And that's something I want to touch upon, is we are sensitive and aware of the parking, I'll say, difficulties in the blocks surrounding Solano. I mean, we live not too far from Solano ourselves. So that being said, given that Albany is also very small and that we're, again, familiar with the city, we decided to choose a location such that we could have the students walk after school through what we call walking school bus to the facility after pickup hours. And really what we're also proposing is to use one of the 2 off-street parking spaces for pickups. And pickups would be likely between 5 and 6, essentially when parents get off of work. The other aspect, and to be frank, not likely we would be able to enforce this, but given that we are targeting and catering towards Cornell and Marin families, the idea is that these families will live in Albany and thus likely, given that Albany is very small, be able to walk or ride a bike. And that's what really we are going to encourage, is that families come, they ride their bike, they walk. I mean, that's something that's, if you have children at Marin and Cornell and Ocean View, that's something that's already being promoted today. And that's something we'd like to continue to encourage.
So like my husband mentioned, we have 3 young kids, and our 2 oldest ones will be at Marin, incoming kindergartner and 2nd grader. And from a young age, we had our kids enrolled in Chinese daycares and preschools. And as we were looking into our after-school options, we found that although Cornell and Ocean View both offer after-school programs, there is a limited capacity. And during the most recent kindergarten information night, I heard a lot of parents inquiring about how do I get my kids into the program. And unfortunately, I think every year only a handful of open spots, come available. And so we resorted to a location in El Cerrito that provides, Chinese language learning. And so we had to make arrangements to pick up our child from Marin and then drive him to his classes. And then as we got to know more of the families in the community, we also learned that there were other families in Albany who also want their children to continue learning Chinese. In fact, one of them actually lives across the street from Cornell and was looking to enroll their children outside of the Albany School District, mainly because they wanted their children to continue learning Chinese. And so recognizing that we were not the only ones that saw a need for this, that we see there are other local families as well who recognize the desire to have their children learn, a different language and also be exposed to, to different science and technology, projects that we're proposing. And that's really why we wanted to, take on this endeavor. And, we live here in the community and, we just want to be part of it. And we thought this being a great location because, again, the whole, being able to walk. We walk to school now, and so we wanted to encourage, walking the kids from school. Now, I recognize that we are expected to have 6 parking spaces, and we only have 2 off-street. And, our school hours, parents are not dropping their children off unless their children don't already attend Marin or Cornell. Otherwise, if they do in fact attend those schools, we're picking them up by foot. The parking impact comes in at the end of the day, or between 5 and 6 p.m. when parents get off work, and the hope is that they live in the community as well, so they're walking or they're biking. Otherwise, they're just parking very short term. And we have 2 off-street parking spaces, and we are planning on allocating one of those for like a loading, like a pickup and drop-off zone for parents when they pick up their kids.
Okay, any questions of the applicant?
Sorry, I did have one question. For Cornell, it's very close. But for Marin, were you thinking that you'd actually have somebody go over there to kind of lead the walking school bus, or would the kids be on their own?
Correct. No. So we have a soon-to-be kindergartner and a second grader. There's no way I would let them walk and try and cross Marin. So part of our business plan is actually to hire the staff and aides. So we will have a fully licensed facility. The state of California Social Services mandates a certain ratio of teachers and aides per students. So likely, especially if it's more than 14, we will, by law, have to have two members of staff go do that run or the pickup at Marin. Same for Cornell, frankly, and then as well as have staff on site at the facility. If you're familiar with the school system, there's early bird, late bird, and that shifts also for kindergarten as well. So we have a part of the business plan is to staff the center accordingly based on the schedule and the, I'll just say the matrix of pickup schedules that we're expecting to have.
Thank you.
Yeah, you answered most of my questions, but just a couple. So in terms of, your business planning, what is your anticipated peak pickup time? Because I know the parking analysis was done around 4 p.m., and I'm just curious if you think that correlates to when most people would be picking up, or if it's actually later, or what you looked at there.
I could see between 4 and 6. So again, having kids in daycare, there were a lot of times we were picking up either at 4 or 4:30 because they had either a swim class or they had some other activity or there's an early dinner. I mean, I think it's hard to say when exactly it's going to be, but from just personal experience, 4 to 6 p.m. is what we're expecting, and like a lot of these schools or care facilities, there will be a charge for parents that come late. So we do expect to close at 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in terms of, so I think it said 38 kids is what you're targeting. Is that based on the state licensing guidelines and
Correct.
the amount of space you have and the amount of staff you would plan to have?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Let me just see. I thought I had one other question. No, I think that's it. So no pickup from Ocean View anticipated for now?
No.
Right, okay. And I assume you're trying to get this approved so you can be open in time for the school year to start? Is that the plan?
We would like to be, I mean,
Okay.
to be frank, I mean, so this is a simultaneous process, not only with the use permit application here for the city of Albany, but also with social
licensing.
services with licensing.
Yeah.
So that's a completely separate process, which they do play hand in hand in that they are expecting, obviously, that we would have this in hand before they issue the license.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a separate application process.
Okay, thanks.
So one question too. The two off-street spots you have are what's shown behind you?
Right.
Tandem parking? Okay.
Right there.
And that right now, half of that's landscaping that you just,
No.
No?
Half of that's landscaping, no.
oh, I guess that's some, maybe not, maybe it's an old picture.
You know, it's been ripped out.
Okay.
You know, kind of. It's
Well, I see
sort
the-
of a
I see the
Hollywood
picture now.
driveway sort of thing back
Got
there.
it. All right, got it, okay.
Yeah, it is, so the building owner is currently renovating this building as well as the rear building. And they're doing some, I'll say, some municipal work with electrical and the gas, so they are going to repave the driveway. And I think, I think once the building's been painted, the repaving of the driveway and, I don't want, not to be offensive, but kind of remove the blight that is currently the front yard is a part of the capital improvements that we plan to make, along with the building owner, to just really overall improve the lot, improve the structure and the land.
So the unit to the north, the building to the north, there seems to be a big swath of driveway. That's all belongs to them.
Correct. There is a, right here, there is a pathway. You got to turn to the staff. I believe that's currently the plan for the foot access to the rear entrance, or for the rear building. Again, we don't own either facility.
That's access to the rear. Okay, got it.
But we are, you saw in one of the plans, we are, because we do want to make this ADA accessible, so working with the building owner is to make basically a 5% grade and allow wheelchair access, which currently the building is not ADA compliant. You can't get to it. But the ramp, working with our architect, the only way that we could actually do it.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. We'll
Thank you.
call you back if we have some. Yeah. No. I have a question of staff, I
oh,
think.
sure.
Of
Yes.
staff. So some years ago, I was on a commission some years ago when VARA was approved. Did you pull the files on that at all? And
I did indeed.
you did indeed? Okay, good. I remember discussion about bicycle parking on that. And then I will admit, I did a lot of Saturday morning yogas there and I always rode my bicycle. And
Yeah, we've put in
because
a
we required bicycle parking because of the traffic, but.
Yeah, we've
the parking-
put our standard condition of approval with this use permit to provide a bike rack as part of the business. So they will have to do that.
Okay, the
as
bicycle
part of their building
parking,
permit
yeah.
improvements.
And do you know how the usage projections for VARA, when they got their use permit, compared with this project?
Yeah, so it was actually a higher intensity use overall because
Yeah.
the business had operating hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So that compared to 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday with no operating hours on Saturday was a bit more intensive.
And I think that, the majority of the yoga students frankly drove. At least that was my own, I guess, I never did a count or anything like that, but just based on my own observations from having done yoga there for a long time, on Saturday mornings for a long time. Most of the students drove, I think. Okay, all right.
Can I ask a question of staff as well? And this actually, I think, relates to the other parking exception we're reviewing tonight on Solano. But I'm curious in the sort of history of other parking exceptions that you refer to. I'm trying to get a sense of the scale or the percentage of reduction that we're talking about. Like we're talking about getting rid of or waiving the requirement for 2/3 of the code required spaces. And I know you haven't necessarily crunched the numbers on this, but is that the kind of exception that has typically been granted for similar commercial properties?
Yeah, so we've had that, particularly where we're dealing with infill businesses on Solano that don't have any off-street parking. We've seen a reduction entirely. So for example, we had a dentist office use last November that has 0 off-street parking. And the commission approved the parking waiver for that. We've had other businesses where a portion of the parking can be provided, but not the full amount as required by code.
And if this were retail, there'd be an automatic exemption of 1,500 square feet would be automatically exempt for, what, that's 2 spaces, I think?
Yeah.
Equivalent, right, automatically, yeah.
I think the difficult thing with the way our parking provisions are structured is that they're, they don't really account. They're very hard and fast in that they don't account for these properties where we don't have off-street parking, but then we're balancing that out with economic development goals.
Okay, let's see now. So I'd like to open the public hearing, I think. Is there anything else from staff? Okay, so do you have a speaker card?
I do, for Harry Pruin.
Okay, and if someone else would like to address the commission, no, you'll have to wait. Let's have the first speaker first.
Yeah, so if someone would like to address the commission, we'd ask that you fill out a speaker card.
And then,
And I'd also ask that we keep the public comment to 3 minutes per speaker, given the number
yeah, I
of
know.
items
I let
we
you
have
go
on the
for
agenda.
like 12 minutes, I'm afraid, and, okay. But go ahead.
Hi, Commissioner, board members. My name is Harry Prine. I'm what you call a long-term resident. My parents bought Solano Cleaning Center at 1219 Solano Avenue in 1964. We've seen a lot of changes in Albany. I'm glad to see Cascade doing something with the property. It's been kind of an eyesore for a little while. But yeah, parking is an issue for the city, as you guys just discussed. Last time I was up here, I was talking about parking again when Daniel Winkler was going up with the second story. I don't oppose him going up. It's just where is everybody going to park? There is a parklet now going on the corner of Solano and Cornell, which is pushing the bus out to the middle of the street. That's going to be interesting when people are getting on and off the bus, especially when the traffic's coming down, say 4 to 6 o'clock in the evening. Where is everybody going to go when it starts backing up? They'll probably just turn down the street, Talbot or Cornell, just to go around the bus. Back in the 70s, when Albany did its first beautification project, it wiped out, I think, about 10 or 12 parking spots between Cornell and Talbot. It put in a bunch of concrete across from the businesses on the south side of Solano, where it used to be the Albany Library. And the claim was it's going to be a great meeting place for the city of Albany residents to meet and congregate. That never happened. Nobody ever meets there. We did try to have the Lunar Parade, Lunar Festival there, and we quickly outgrew that little location, and now I proposed that we move it to the Albany Theater, and that's where we've been having it ever since. I'm past president of Solano Avenue Association. What I'm proposing is, the city could come up with money to put in a parklet. Is there any way they could put up money to pull out some of that concrete and put in, have easily 100 feet, I measured it today, anywhere from 8 to 10 cars could be put in front of the YMCA now to ease parking situations.
The former library.
The former library, which is now the YMCA.
Okay.
Is there any way we could put in parallel, diagonal parking? I talked to Daniel Winkler about it. He's all in favor of it. It would ease the congestion on Solano Avenue greatly, because now we are getting quite popular with Little Star Pizza and Eugene's and the movie theater. Just wondering if the city would consider maybe easing some parking restrictions and opening up a lot of spaces. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, interesting suggestion.
Thank you.
All right, okay, good. Other speakers? No, sure, feel free, come up and state your name for the microphone again.
Hi, I'm Linda Haymaker. I had one question before I started. When was the parking analysis done on our street for this?
It's in the staff report.
Last Thursday.
Last Thursday?
Okay, because it's a completely different situation on parking in the summer than it is during the school year. At the school year, there is no parking on our street. We're maxed out, we're at the breaking point. And this has only happened in the last 2 or 3 years. I cannot get into my driveway, I cannot get out of my driveway, it's almost always blocked. It's a narrow street, and I have a small car, and I have to come within an inch just to edge out, just to get out of my driveway because I'm blocked in so tightly. And to try to get in, I usually can't even get in. And I have to bring home groceries and other heavy things. I cannot be walking a half a block or a block to try to get my stuff home. So I'm hoping that whatever they want to do there, they can handle the parking and the volume that they're going to have. And if everybody walks and takes a bike, fine, but that usually doesn't happen. What I see happening is people get busy and stressed, and they use the cars, especially when the weather's bad, which is probably 5 or 6 months out of the year. And I love to see them walking down the street, and that's what everybody used to do on our street. But I'm afraid we're going to have to get to the point where we only have permit parking for the residences there. It's getting so bad. Just have 1 or 2 hour parking, which seems like an undue hardship on all of us. I do like Harry's idea a lot of seeing if they might be able to get a little more parking in front of the old library, like the rest of Solano is. They could probably ease some of the burden that way. But maybe somebody could take a look at this during the regular school day and see how bad it is. It's pretty crazy. It's like downtown San Francisco. There's no place to park.
Okay.
So one question.
Okay, a question. Wait a
Linda,
minute.
Linda, that little spot between your house going south, is that a full parking spot or is that like undersized?
It's undersized,
And that's what
and
caused
people
the crowd.
park in that
Yeah,
all the
that's-
time. They never used to until about 2 or 3 years ago. But something happened either with the volume at Cornell or the way that people are driving, but we are getting so many people driving now, and we're getting the people. Nobody ever parked in that spot unless they had a little VW or a Mini Cooper or something like that. Now people will park in there, and there's half a dozen other spots that are like mine that aren't really a legal parking spot. And it's maddening enough when we're trying to get in, but if you're trying to get out and you can't even get out, you feel pretty claustrophobic.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think I could address her.
Okay, why don't you come up then? Okay.
I will remind the commission, we have a pretty full agenda tonight.
Yeah, we
and we're not
do,
through
and
the
we also,
calendar.
we want to keep the conversation focused on
I'm easy.
this
I'm too
application
easy.
too,
Okay, go
not
ahead.
general parking
Go ahead.
issues.
Real quick, Tilden Preparatory moved in, and they have a lot of students that are driving the cars there, and it's been an issue before, and I see it happening again. That's who's parking there, along with expanded businesses, more employees, because more desks are being opened up.
Okay.
But it's the preparatory that's seen.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll close the public hearing now and bring it back to the commission. All right. So further discussion or a motion? What's the pleasure of the commission?
I'd just like to say a couple things. So, and I'll say that I am the mother of 2 kids at Cornell, and they currently go to the Y for aftercare, and we try to walk, as much as we can, or sometimes my husband bikes. Occasionally, I need to drive on my way, somewhere else, and I see how frustrating it is. And it's a congested, increasingly urban area, and I'm sympathetic to the people who live there and experience those impacts. I do also, I know it's hard to back this up with any numbers or kind of quantitative analysis because we just don't have that information, but I suspect that, this program would be drawing a lot from people who currently go to aftercare at the Y or within, other places within walking distance. And I suspect, again, I can't prove it, but that it might not really change the traffic patterns in that particular area very much. I also, think there are a lot of things we could talk about with, parking more generally, but I'm concerned about the idea of trying to, it seems a little perhaps ad hoc, how parking standards and exceptions have been granted, and perhaps there is an opportunity to have a broader analysis about some of those issues. But I also am concerned about, making the last business in try to solve the problems that other businesses maybe are contributing to just because they got there first. So all that said, while I would like to see more, information in the record to support the idea that this will not be a real parking impact, I don't see any particularly acute concern about this use contributing to the parking issues in that neighborhood, and agree that, again, as the mother of 2 school-age kids, I understand that it's hard to find good quality aftercare that serves a wide variety of needs in the community. So I am supportive of the application, but certainly would like to continue having opportunities to talk more broadly about the parking and circulation issues.
I was going to make a comment, and then, Ann, I was going to ask you, maybe you could provide an update on the city's work on the overall strategy for Solano and San Pablo. But as part of that effort, the city did do some survey work in 2015. It wasn't reflected in the staff report, but when you look at, there was a 1 o'clock period during weekdays and a 7 o'clock period. The 1 o'clock actually showed a fair amount of green on-street parking spaces nearby. 7 o'clock is more impacted. Solano is impacted. And the block that Linda had mentioned is all red there. But south towards the school, Cornell, it was showing greener on-street parking space. So it appeared that there was some availability, not on that direct block, but 1 block to the south. Yeah. In general, I agree with Commissioner Jennings that it seems like a good use in a walkable area that is probably a need, and I think it will be beneficial to students and parents with some modest impacts on parking and traffic in the area. Oh, sorry, and can you just mention a little bit about, there's a move afoot to look, the city's been looking at an overall strategy for Solano.
So I guess I should ask a clarification question. Are we talking about the parking survey work or the Solano Avenue Complete Streets?
The parking strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did do a parking survey through a grant we had through ACTC 2 years ago, and we took that to council earlier this year just to accept the report. We haven't been given any formal direction at this time to change the parking policies on Solano as far as like changing timing or zones or anything along those lines, but we did have a comprehensive data collection that was done that in the future, I think we should include it when we have these parking surveys just for reference, because it's a little more comprehensive than our, walking around with the clipboard and doing a survey.
Can I also just add, I mean, every time we deal with a project on Solano Avenue, we kind of struggle with this economic development versus parking. So the city kind of has identified this as a constraint, and we're trying to work towards developing a broader strategy on transportation and parking here. Not there yet, but.
Yeah, it's more than not only a dilemma for us, but it's kind of a dilemma for everybody, because the more successful Lower Solano gets, the more difficult the parking becomes. And that is a trend that we're seeing now, I think. And we've had some new successful businesses.
And potentially more.
On Lower Solano. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Any other discussion on this item?
A couple of comments.
Sure, Chris.
My kids go to Chinese class on Saturday mornings, and we go to Oakland because there's nothing local, and most of the people that go there are from Albany, surprisingly enough. So I can definitely see a need here, and we would be able to walk to this. then the question comes, do people come from other areas to take advantage of the school? I don't know, it depends. If it's hard to park, they probably won't. But the suggestion about expanding parking, reintroducing that parking that was taken along Solano, is there a possibility that if you were waived parking, you say you have 6 requirements and we waive 4, there's some kind of fund you can contribute to, so that in the future, if we find opportunities to build parking, we can use that fund to do it?
There is some language in the code about an in lieu fund, and it gives the city council authority to establish that and to then designate the money in there for specific projects. To my knowledge, that's never been fully implemented. Just the language is there.
That was discussed when we did the general plan. It was discussed when we did the zoning ordinance in 2004. And the sort of parking fees for this kind of waiver just have never been implemented. Because for us to build a structure would cost millions of dollars, and several $1 million at a minimum.
Yeah, but to do on-street parking, maybe not, maybe less than $1 million.
Or contribute to TDM measures, but.
Neither the commission nor the city council has ever bit the bullet on that and gone and said that applicants like this are going to have to pay $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 for their parking waivers.
Right.
And that's the way you would raise the money to deal with, to create more parking spaces.
Right.
Like what they've done in downtown Walnut Creek, but with huge amounts of money and very high levies.
Well, maybe it's not the only source, but it can, it's part of
It would help.
many aspects of it.
Yeah, no, when we redid the zoning code, we really had our sights kind of set on putting a structure behind the Albany Theater and doubling the parking space back there. It would be a great idea, add a lot of new spaces, but it's very expensive to take that on. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? No.
No, that's all.
Well, I'll make a comment that I support the project, and I welcome the business. I welcome the idea of the Chinese Learning Center. I really do hope that your little walking school buses work, and I think there's a good possibility they will. And I personally think that the parking impact from your use on this site will probably be less than what was there when it was a yoga center. And that's my personal thing. So I think that this is perhaps a better and more appropriate use, and I support it. So with that, I'll take a motion.
I would move to approve the conditional use permit and parking waiver for Su Yuan's Chinese Learning Center.
Okay, is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so your project's been approved. Again, as I said before, there's a 14-day appeal period. It could be appealed to the city council. If not, then our decision tonight is final. And good luck on your other track getting permits. And then after the 14-day appeal period, you can come back to the city planning department and get a building permit. Okay, thank you. Okay, are we done with the consent calendar? Wow. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to address the commission on something that's not on the agenda? Something that's not on the agenda, all right. Seeing no one, we've had a few things not on the agenda, like creating more parking on Solano. Thanks for getting it in there, I guess. All right, then I'll close the public comment period and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is conditional use permit and parking waiver for the Wild Card Brewing Company at 1122 Solano, another Solano Avenue project. And Christopher, staff report?
Yes, this is a conditional use permit and parking waiver for Wildcard Brewing Company at 1122 Solano. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 9,187 square foot lot with an existing 16,391 square foot mixed-use building built in 1946. City records show that the permit was filed. A permit was filed to add partition walls to the existing retail space in September of 1997. The property was sold to the current owners in spring of 2017. Foam Creations previously occupied the subject space with additional retail merchandise and vacated the adjacent shell in May of 2017. Here's a street view of the shell right now, as you would see it today. Project request. The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit and parking waiver for Wildcard Brewing Company. The conditional use permit is required for the tasting room use, and a parking waiver is required to waive the required 7 off-street parking spaces. Here's an existing elevation, and this is essentially the same thing without the materials cost called out. There's the only change to the exterior is retrofitting the existing door to be ADA accessible. Building business details. The applicant is proposing a new beer tasting room. Wildcard Brewing is based in Reading, and this will be their first Bay Area location. Hours of operation are proposed to be Sunday through Thursday, 12 p.m. to 10 p.m., and Friday to Saturday, 12 p.m. to 11 p.m. 4 employees are proposed to be on site at any given time. Production activities and food services are not proposed for this location. The applicant will be operating under an ABC Type 23 duplicate license. There is tenant improvements proposed for this project scope. Tenant improvements include new counter spaces, seating for patrons, a new bar area, walk-in cooler, ADA, unisex restroom, mop sink, and storage areas. A portion of the existing mezzanine level, 17 square feet in area, is proposed to be voided to comply with building code compliance regarding mezzanine coverage. This will result in a total of 1,453 square foot tenant space. Parking waiver. The property lacks off-street parking. A parking waiver is required for the proposed tasting room use. The applicant is seeking to waive the requirement for 7 off-street parking spaces. That a bar uses in Albany is 1 space per 200 square feet of area. The proposed bar space area is 1,453 square feet in area. A parking study was conducted on Thursday, July 20th, 2017 at 4 p.m. The survey concluded that 24.2% of on-street parking is available within a 500-foot radius of the subject site. Staff has received 3 letters of support for Wildcard Brewing Company. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the attached findings and conditions of approval.
Okay. Questions of staff? I have a question. This isn't retail, and so it doesn't qualify for the 1,500 square foot exemption. Is that your conclusion?
Correct, and this is not new construction, which triggers that.
It's not new construction, then also it fits the definition of bar. The applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the consumption will be on-site, and I believe there will be an option for growlers to be filled and taken home, but that's really the only retail component.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Other questions with staff?
So we've had a couple of these recently. There was one on San Pablo. This is a tasting room.
So this is different in that they don't do any of the brewing on site. They will be bringing kegs down from Reading once a week, and then they have this refrigeration storage, so they can, use the provisions as demand warrants, but they will not be doing any production on site.
And the San Pablo one was?
They're putting in 3 tanks.
Oh, it
and
was
they're doing it all on site.
Whatever they called it, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, is there, with the bigger structure of this building, isn't there parking at all for the whole?
There is some parking, but I believe it's allocated to the apartment uses above.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's in the rear, I think, isn't it? Yeah, a few spaces, yeah.
I think there may be 9 or 10 off-street parking spaces, but I believe there's 9 apartments.
I think, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my question, is if there are, I thought there were apartments above, and I know there's a condition of approval relating to compliance with noise standards. I was just wondering if you could speak briefly about what those standards are that they need to.
Yeah, so in general, we do have a noise ordinance in Chapter 8 of the city's municipal code, and we have a general provision for compliance. I think in this case that we may be able to have the applicant do some additional noise mitigation through sound insulation and that sort of thing as part of their business construction.
Is the applicant present for this project? would you like to make a presentation? Tell us a little bit about what you're up to and describe the modifications you want to do.
Hello, thank you
Hi.
for welcoming me up and giving me your time tonight. My name is Jenny Hansen, and I am the co-founder of Wildcard Brewing Company, and we are located up in far northern California, Redding. My husband and I opened in 2012, so this year we'll be celebrating 5 years in business, and that is super exciting for us, but we're also very thrilled to be taking such a huge step in opening up a tasting room in the Bay Area. We've been very fortunate that as we've grown in Redding, we've just seen an outpour of demand and support locally. We're actually the first brewery in Shasta County, so we're really had a huge territory to ourselves for a very long time, and we're able to continue to grow our business and stay local. And now that we have been adding additional tank space and hiring new employees, we're really looking to take that next step of growth. And for us, that's coming down to the Bay Area. For those of you that enjoy craft beer, you have probably noticed that you live in a really huge craft beer culture, and the industry down here is fantastic. So we're really excited about being part of this Bay Area, and specifically Albany. Just the downtown is adorable, and we're really excited about this space in particular, just because it offers us such an opportunity to showcase our beer and our products to folks that aren't familiar with us, even though we've been around for 5 years. So we're very, very excited about the project, and Richard has been the architect on the project and can explain some of these drawings.
Yeah, okay.
Good evening. My name is Richard Tapp. I'm the architect. Do we have the floor plan up there, Chris? Thank you. So just a couple of things as far as we are for the total area is 1,453 square feet. So theoretically, we are less than the 1,500 for retail, even though we don't fall into that retail requirement. We're at an occupant load of 49. So we're a B class, so it's considered a small bar under a B class, which is an office business occupancy. And then as far as the seating goes, we have 34 seats on the first floor and 12 on the mezzanine. The mezzanine, so we've got the entry here, and then we've got the bar section here, the walk-in cooler, and then we've got an ADA unisex bathroom, utility areas and some storage. We do have stairs going up to the mezzanine, and then this is the mezzanine. It's open to the floor below. And the mezzanine really is a great opportunity design-wise for the customers, and it gives a completely different feel. There are some technical issues, though, we have to deal with, which are building code items, but we've already got those resolved. And then this is an existing storage area, and what we have to do to make this comply with current codes is we have to void off this area here. The ceiling heights are, we've got 17 feet there, which is great, and it gives us a good accommodation. And then, let's see, there are really no exterior changes except for the ADA for the front door. And the door doesn't comply because we don't have 2 foot on and 18 inches on the push side and pull side. And because it's an old building, it's not historic, but I think it's significant for the downtown. So we didn't want to do any modifications for the storefront at all. And we're adding an ADA automatic door, push buttons on the outside. So that's the only exterior change. I think there is a painting upgrade to the building that's going to be done by the landlord, who's present here tonight, and signage will be done separately. That'll be a completely separate permit. So we've talked about now. So I know parking has come up a little bit tonight, and we support the removal of the concrete in front of the wall. So, but as far as we think more than 50% of the customers will be people who actually walk locals who work from businesses or from apartments, residential. I think there'll be quite a lot of parking bike parking required. Down at Fieldwork, I was there on the weekend, and there were about 6 to 8 bikes down there, and that's very popular. So, and we'll be putting a bike rack out front. Then AC Transit is there, you know, fantastic public transport. So, and many of the businesses. The other thing too is most of the custom will be happening from 6 o'clock on. So that's when a lot of the businesses will be winding down. So I think that, you know, that meshes well. And there is some parking on the property. There are 7 units above, residential units above, the 4 retail or commercial units below, and there are 6 existing parking spaces in a garage, actually behind this door. This door leads back into a large parking area, or actually a 2-story space. But they're all designated and mandated for the residential tenants. Then as far as noise, we'll definitely take care of noise on the inside. In Jenny's other facility up in Reading, they've done a good noise abatement. They're good neighbours, and they have support from the letters from the Mayor, I think, and the Chamber of Commerce. And not only that, they're good community participants too. They're in a lot of charity work and interesting. They get involved in the community, which they'll be doing here as well. No food. So no food will be served, and none prepared or provided on site. And then as far as no live music as part of this proposal, and then employees, Chris mentioned that there would be 4 employees on the property at one time. That's actually not correct. There will be 2 maximum employees at any one time. They've hired 4 people locally. Yeah, so with the shifting and all the rest of it, so therefore it'll be basically 2 employees.
Okay. Questions? I have one.
No food? I mean, don't you have to have food if you serve alcohol?
No, actually, as a type 23, you do not have to have food. I think the food comes into it when you're serving hard alcohol, but with just beer tastings, it's not a requirement. It's not part of our background, so it's really something that we'd like to stay away from. You see a lot of businesses fail that start to offer a bad burger or a greasy slice of pizza,
Well,
and
I
the
guess I'm
beer
thinking
becomes
of the
secondary.
I'm thinking of the wine tasting rooms where they always have a little bit of something to clean your
We've
palate.
got some
but, you know.
peanuts and pretzels maybe, but that would be the extent of it, yep.
Okay. Questions?
Mr. Tapp must have made you a shoe-in for this job, huh?
Okay.
Beg your pardon?
Mr. Tapp, it must have made you a shoe-in for this type of job.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Hey, I had just a couple questions. One for you, which is for 1,400 square feet. What's the occupancy approximately? How many seats do you expect to have in here?
Oh yeah, so we've got 34 on the first floor, and then we have 12 on the mezzanine, so a total of 46.
Okay.
That's the seating count on the plan. The occupant load is 49, miraculously. So we've done a detailed occupancy study, and so we've done here. This is the.
That's okay. I mean, that was the number I was looking for.
Okay. And basically, it's a combination because we've got different uses. So we have the tasting room, the custom area. We've got the bar. Then we have the walk-in cooler and the restrooms. They're all factored in with different calculations, different factors.
And then I'm just curious. Can you talk a little more about why Albany?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you said you want to come to the Bay Area, but.
Yes, so we actually have just seen a huge boom in our industry in this area. You look at breweries like Fieldwork and their success in this area and the growth that they've had. They've actually opened up 5 tasting rooms themselves, all in different areas, starting here first. And as my husband and I looked at this area and the boom that it's having and all these craft beer bars, we just knew that this is an area that we needed to be if we wanted to see the kind of success and growth that we need. Reading is about 90,000 people, but we're really spread out. It's a much older demographic, a lot of retired folks, and this community has a craft beer culture already built in. It's not like we're having to reinvent the wheel down here. So we're just excited to be here, as it's going to be a really craft beer enthused group already.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If I could just add that too, that they already provide restaurants and retailers here in the Bay Area. So they have a truck that comes down, you may want to say.
Yeah, we have about 30 accounts down in this area, Berkeley, Oakland, and then over on the other side, Concord down to about Livermore, that every single week we come down and service those bars and restaurants. And we saw such a demand with that was kind of our test for this market to see whether or not we'd be accepted and supported.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think the Albany Hopsy has been very successful too.
Yeah.
I think that's been doing very well. It's only a couple of years old now. But I have a question for you. I'd like to work with you on something. It has to do with bicycle parking. I really agree with you. I think that a number of your customers will be using bicycles. I saw the potential for at least 2 bike racks out front in a couple of locations. I think I'd encourage you to do that and to put those in. In addition, I'm wondering if you could find some internal biking places where people with expensive bikes could bring them in. And what I'm looking at is under the stairwell, under the staircase there, would you be able to put up a hanging rack for 5 or 6 or 7 bikes, something like that, where your customers might be able to come in and hang the bikes there, and something that you would promote? And anyway, on the lower,
about in here?
yeah, right in that area
Yeah,
there. I don't know
right.
what's going there, or even remove one of your tables along the wall near the front and have some sort of a hanging bike rack there.
I definitely agree with you that the bike racks are huge, and I, as the business owner, want the bike racks there because I know that I'm going to be asked for them anyways. We opened a year ago a second tasting room in our own downtown without bike racks, and that was the very first thing that we got asked. So where are the bike racks? Where are the bike racks? I'd be here if you had a bike rack.
I think that could happen.
So we immediately put them in, and I would definitely want to do this outside this building. However, to put them inside does worry me a little bit, just as a tripping hazard. The motion of bringing those bikes in and out, you have people coming down the stairs, you turn your back from the bar with your drink, you don't realize somebody's behind you with their bike. I don't love the idea of the bikes inside, but I definitely know that that's needed.
I don't know if I want to make it a condition of approval or not, but I'd really like you to think seriously about it. We've done it with a couple of our exercise studios here. I think that some of them have agreed to say, yeah, okay, we can do that. It's for bike safety, and I think that customers with expensive bikes are going to like that and come back because they'll be able to see their bikes when they're doing business. So,
I don't think they should ride expensive bikes and drink beer at the same time.
If I can address this point, my name is Ed Hemnasser. I'm one of the landlords.
Okay.
And it's visible from inside the space. You could see all outside. So if you have 2 bike racks outside, you could see every bike. You could be a customer, and you could still see your bike.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I acknowledge that's possible, yeah.
I would just note, I was just looking at pictures of Fieldworks. They actually do have some bike racks inside, too.
Inside? Okay.
Yeah, I almost hit my head on one going in. It was like, I was paying attention elsewhere, so it's convenient, but there is a little bit of a hazard issue with them.
Just as this building's narrow in its design. Yeah, I like the
It's a
stairwell.
big glass frontage, so it's very visible. 17-foot ceilings, even the mezzanine, you could see the outside. Everywhere you sit inside, you could see the front. So if you have the bike racks, they're visible.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
And how do we determine the number of bike racks in something like this? Is
We
it partially
basically-
the space on the street?
It's the availability of space on the street and what Aleda Andrino Chavez, our transportation planner, based on her measurements, how many racks she believes can be adequately accommodated there.
Yeah.
So I think at least one. There could be a possibility for two, depending on how they're sited.
Yeah, that's my
I do agree at field work.
That's my
It's
thinking, is at
often
least
very
one.
full. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want you to at least be flexible about it, because your customers may
Yeah, I think the
really
stairwell's a great idea.
really want to be able to take their bike inside. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Mhm. Yeah. So, okay. Anything else? Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'd like to open the public hearing on this item. Haven't yet, have I? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this project? Seeing no one? I'll close the public hearing. Okay, bring it back to commission. Further discussion, a motion, your thoughts?
I like the project. I'm willing to do the waivers. I like your idea about as much bike parking as we can, and ready to make a motion whenever you're ready.
Okay.
I like the project too. I think it'll help liven up that part of Solano even more. And the idea of requiring parking for a place that's serving alcohol always seems a little counterintuitive to me. So, yeah, I'm ready to support a motion as well.
Okay.
Yes, I like the project. I guess I'm a little bit limited in my vision of bringing bikes in the restaurant. Just like I think if you can't tie your dog on the light post and go in and get something, then you shouldn't be bringing your dog downtown. Same with your bike. If you can't leave it outside, why are you riding it around? So I know it's just my little view. So I think it's great the way it is. I like the bikes out front. I think it advertises the space and encourages people to ride bikes.
Okay. I support the project too, and I won't go so far as to require interior bike parking, but I hope the applicant hears me, and I hope the applicant listens to the customers. If the customers say they want to be able to hang up their bikes, and they might. Okay. Okay, so I'll take a motion.
I would move PA 17045, conditional use permit and parking waiver for Wild Card Brewing Company, 1122 Solano.
Okay.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's been approved unanimously. You have your use permit, subject to potential appeal to City Council and for 14 days. However, if no one appeals, then our decision is final, and you have your use permit. Congratulations and good luck going forward. Great. Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is design review and parking reduction for a single-story addition at 663 San Gabriel. I need to recuse myself on this because I live 496 feet away, something like that. Part of my big radius line touches this parcel. So I'll go in the back room, and Val, maybe you want to preside over this?
Sure.
And then call me back when you're done.
Three knocks on the door, something like that.
Yeah, knock on the door when you're done. Thank you.
All right, Ann or Chris?
Yeah.
Once again, this is design review and parking reduction approval for a single-story addition at 663 San Gabriel. Some background on the property. The subject site is a 4,272 square foot lot with an existing 1,602 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home built in 1937. City records show the following work done to the property: a re-roof of 800 square feet in September of 1979, replacement of 45 feet of garage footing, a change in electrical service to 100 amps in September of 1988, kitchen remodel, dry rot repair, downstairs bathroom addition, remove of a window and install sliding doors and new patio deck, new outdoor lights in September of 1993, tear down and rebuild of an existing chimney from roof up in December of 1993. This is a horrible street view of the property right now because there's this tree right here, but we'll see the elevations later. Project request: the applicant is seeking design review approval for 564 square feet rear addition, and also a parking reduction to waive the requirement for the off-street parking. Some additional project details. The main level is proposed to be expanded by 248 square feet to accommodate an expanded bedroom with walk-in closet. The proposed lower level addition will be directly below the main level and will be 256 square feet in area to accommodate another bedroom. This will result in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2,106.5 square feet home with a maximum height of 21 feet. And here's the existing rear elevation where the addition is proposed. And this is the proposed elevation afterwards. Exterior project details, the applicant is proposing painted stucco siding, architectural clay pipes, tile roofing, and a roof pitch to match the existing home, and also a new redwood trellis and brackets. Parking reduction, the existing property provides no off-street parking. The garage was converted under previous ownership and the driveway length is 14.5 feet and thus does not meet the minimum requirement of 16 feet. The applicant is seeking a parking reduction to waive the parking requirement for 2 off-street parking spaces due to insufficient room on site for legal-sized parking spaces. No correspondences have been received by staff. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA. Recommendation, the staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review the proposed project and provide feedback to the applicant and staff. Draft findings and conditions of approval are included should the commission decide to take action.
Any clarifications for staff?
I'm a little confused about the back grading, the backyard. So it's a split level, right?
Yes.
And so the lower level is a little below the grade, and the upper level is, well, obviously, but the main level is 2-3 feet above grade.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And we can let the applicant speak, but I believe the finished floor of that lower level is lower than the natural grade.
It's like 18 inches into the grade. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
I was actually a little confused by that. The title says single story. But do you characterize it as a single story?
This is actually, so it is a 2-level addition, and it's that lower level coming out and then the level above it, the existing split level.
Yeah, the title, I had the same question because the title of the matter was for a single-story addition. I don't know if you had other questions.
No, that was it.
Yeah, and
just trying to make sure I understood what.
Right. Yeah, and I actually was I had some questions trying to understand too, because I saw some different numbers throughout the staff report. The first, the beginning, and I realized I could probably scour the plans and figure this all out, but the beginning summary says it's a 564-foot addition. Later on, it says 504. The numbers about the upper and lower level, I think, are different throughout. At the beginning, it says 2106 square feet. Later, it says it's 2186. The beginning says that the site does have code-compliant off-street parking, which doesn't seem to be accurate. And so I guess I also had a question because the calculations on the setbacks indicate that the proposed construction would have a south setback that's only 2 feet 9 inches, which I don't think is accurate based on the plans, and it wouldn't be compliant with code. So that concerned me when I first saw it, but I think it's just a typo.
I think that is a typo that we can correct. There is an existing non-conforming wall, but that is not proposed to be.
But they're not extending
expanded.
that. Okay. So I guess I don't have a particular question about that, but I would like to just request that whether we take action tonight or if this comes back, I would like to see some of those points
we can definitely refine
in
that.
whatever gets approved, just to avoid confusion down the road about what is the project we're actually approving.
So, yeah, one more follow-up question. So being that it's sunk in the ground, there's no egress from that from the lower rear bedroom out to the yard?
I think the window on the back, the rear elevation of that lower level may be, it may have the 24-inch clear for egress. I don't know how high above
No, I
the
mean,
finished.
okay, for emergency, I mean for regular walking to the backyard, you wouldn't, there's no.
Oh, a means of egress simply to access the rear yard? No, I don't believe they
Okay.
have that on the
Those
lower
are
level.
emergency, okay, got it, all right.
Oh, and one thing that is a real question, which is, it seemed from the staff report like the garage conversion wasn't something that was permitted. Is that correct, or you just were not sure?
We found something, it was something murky in our records that suggested it was done with a permit in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
I say murky because it had an entry for garage repairs and work, but it didn't explicitly say conversion, but it did identify foundation work and electrical and other upgrades to make it habitable.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, any more questions at this point?
So on that, well, yeah, one more, so that murky permit, when you said make it habitable, did it show the bathroom and?
We didn't have any floor plans with it. It was a simple entry on a permit card that just had a written description of the work.
Definitely murky.
Yeah. I think we're probably ready for
Okay,
applicant.
the applicant, if you want to come up and tell us a little bit about your project.
So there's a number of issues. There is one non-code conforming space on the front, and the parking space is 14 feet in some minor amount of inches. And that's to the city setback. But to the sidewalk, we actually do have 16 inches, right? And as part of the plan here, we are widening that driveway. And yes, it's non-conforming, but there is an ability to park 2 small cars there if, you allow 1 foot to hang over onto the city setback, but will not cut into the sidewalk. So that's one thing. There was a seismic retrofit permit, which I've included in the drawings that was done, that shows the layout of the downstairs, and that was done, I don't know how many years ago, but I did include that in the drawing so that you can see it. And that was on page 5. It does show the existing bathroom down there. It also has a kitchenette in that room, which is part of this project. We are removing that kitchenette. It is a 2-story addition. The backyard is sunken, but there is access out through the back of the lower bedroom that goes to the family room, and then there's a side door out the garage that gives you access to the backyard. But it is not an access straight off of the bedroom into the backyard. There are 2 sets of windows, one of which is an egress window, and that is on the south elevation. Be happy, and thank you for seeing me. I'm sorry I didn't do a more gracious introduction.
Okay, so that brings up another question I have about the landscape, because it's minor, but it's, the landscape plan shows, looks like a walkway going to the side of the rear, like a brick path that goes to the window.
There is, the whole yard, the whole lot has been extensively landscaped. So our plan is to interrupt that landscaping as minimally as possible.
Oh, this is an existing plan, or is this a proposed site plan and landscape plan? So that brick path, well, no, you're adding a new brick path.
There's a side path that goes down the whole north side of the place to the front of the driveway. That's a concrete path.
No, going from the wood deck
Yes.
to the new rear bedroom,
Yes.
there's a brick path,
Yes.
but it leads to a window.
Well, it leads across the windows, right?
Oh, to the astroturf, got it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense now. All right, thanks.
So there's a downset of stairs that used to go into the doorway, and that leads out to the backyard.
Okay.
The deck empties off to the north side of the deck, not off the back.
Okay. And why that strip of exposed gravel?
Yeah, that's actually because I want to make sure that there's really good drainage underneath this. So we got a full drainage, we will have a full drainage system under that wall, because this is sunken and it is on the flats of Albany. So the water table is about 6 inches below grade when it rains. So any kind of clay surface on there means you really got to worry about water coming into the building. So I put a decorative gravel on top of gravel that will feed directly into a drainage system that will empty to the street.
Okay, great, yeah. So can you put how do you prevent that? Is there like a plastic, can you put a plastic waterproof membrane under the concrete, or is that not structurally sound?
You can, under the concrete you cannot resist hydrostatic pressure when you're doing waterproofing. You have to drain the pressure, which means there needs to be a drainage system under the floor slab and at the perimeter. You can bituathane off the sides, and you frequently put what's called a vapor barrier underneath the concrete. But a vapor barrier cannot resist hydrostatic pressure. And so if the water table actually raises to within 6 inches of the ground, which it frequently does in this area, it's like putting a bowl upside down putting a bowl into your kitchen sink. It tends to push up. This is not a good thing.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, thank you. We may have you come back up. Why don't we open up to a public hearing? Ann, do you have any speaker cards?
No speaker cards.
No speaker cards. Okay, we'll close the public hearing then. Any comments? Thoughts, comments? So we're being asked two things, one on design review and the parking exception.
Well, I think this 14.52 to the property line plus another 1.73 to the sidewalk. So what's that? 15.5, 16 feet. That's, yeah, most cars, unless it's a minivan, could probably fit in there. So I take that point. That makes a lot of sense. That even though technically, we've done this on some of the smaller lots we were looking at last year. We've allowed them. They weren't legal spots, but we understood that people could be parking them. So this takes some.
I'd like to add one more salient detail, and that is this is a street that only has houses on one side, and cars on the other side. So there's a whole side of the street which there's always parking available on the other side of the street. There are no houses.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not so concerned about the parking waiver on this project.
Yeah, and I'm not concerned either. I just generally don't like the idea that there was perhaps like an unpermitted conversion, and then you like sanction it later on. But I wouldn't penalize you for something that a prior owner did. And it doesn't sound like there is a concern or a constraint with parking on the site. As to the design review, I wish our architect was here tonight to perhaps provide some more meaningful comments, but my general take is that it seems like it's a good use of the space. It's in scale with the existing house and the neighborhood. It doesn't seem obtrusive from the street, and I think it still preserves nice use of the backyard. So that's all I got.
Sorry, would you mind coming up here and speaking? Just because it's being recorded. And
One other issue on screening, because this addition is slightly higher than the main house, and it is a McGregor, so we're trying to take with a more traditional style of McGregor and blend with it. But one thing is, this does project into the backyard quite a bit, and it is a little bit higher than the rest of the house. But an offsetting factor of that is there's about a 60-foot redwood tree right behind it that totally screens off the back neighbors, which I've also done additions for. Just on the other side of the block. That's how I was referred to the project. So there will be no intrusion into the neighbors on the back because of this existing redwood tree, which we can hope will last another 500 years.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. One concern I did have, though, as I looked at it again, was I like the little trellis touch on the front of the building to kind of soften that facade, but I'm not sure if the way the vine is growing from the side of the building to wrap around to go, I guess it could happen, just has to be trained. It's not wouldn't want to, let's see, what sheet was that? Sheet 9. So we're bringing the wisteria from the side of the building around to the front, up the ladder over to the trellis. It's all you need is a little opening in that concrete to get that thing going. No, right between the two parking spots.
We can do that, but again, on the side, I have a wisteria in my own backyard. I can't keep down.
No, you could do that. Yeah, I'm not saying you couldn't pull that off. It just that's not quite as clean looking. It's, yeah.
Ann, I had a question. If we move this forward and approve it, what happens to that murky parking space that was in the building? Does that actually get approved somehow as part of this, or, I mean, the lack of a parking place from whatever that earlier work?
Right, so it's sort of implicitly approved by the approval of these elevations and floor plans. So it is approved effectively.
Okay, all right. I have to say, I appreciate the design. I like the design work. I struggle a little bit with this on parking. I usually like to give the benefit of doubt on these. I'm a little bit concerned that something was removed before, not by this particular owner. But I think I can support the findings, particularly as you had mentioned that it's a one-sided street and it seems like there's sufficient on-street spaces for this. So I think I could support the project. And if there are not any more comments, I'm happy to take a motion.
Yes, that I would move to, sorry, I gotta pull up the address again.
663 San Gabriel.
663 San Gabriel, thank you. I would move to approve PA 17039, design review and parking exception for 663 San Gabriel, with the one request to clean up
modify the staff report.
Just to have the record be clear.
And I'll second the motion. And let's call the item. So all in favor?
Aye.
And no opposed. So, Ann, you're going to have to help me out with this.
So
it's been approved, but there's a
14-day appeal period. Yeah.
So don't do anything yet. But if there's no appeal, then speak with staff and you can move forward on the project.
Yeah, at that point you can submit for building permit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. And why don't we wait for Doug to come back in? Hoping we didn't lose you.
Okay, that's done. All right, so next item on the agenda then is the parking code amendments.
Our last item of this agenda. So several times earlier in the year, we had come to the commission with amendments, proposed amendments to the residential parking policies in the city zoning code. And so we have what we think is now the final draft for you to take action and hopefully adopt a resolution forwarding a recommendation to the city council to put these amendments into place. So just to refresh your memory, on November 8th of last year, the Albany voters approved Measure N1, which establishes new language in the city's planning and zoning code, that's Chapter 20, and gives the authority to city council to set residential parking standards for new construction through a conventional ordinance amendment process. Measure D, when it was approved in 1978, required 2 parking spaces per new dwelling unit regardless of size or type. Previously, the standard requirement was 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. So for new construction, whether it was a single-family residence or an efficiency unit, the same number of parking spaces was required. So within this past year, the commission has reviewed this as a study session item in January, February 8th, and April 26th, providing feedback at each review. Then we had our study session at the end of June to review the San Pablo Avenue specific plan, just to give you some additional context on how they're doing their parking for infill development. And so what we have before you tonight is the final draft, which was part of your packet. So we did some additional refinement from April 26th. We incorporated parking exceptions for affordable housing with a TDM package and/or bicycle parking in the residential uses table. We've included language about incentives for affordable housing as it relates to car parking, and we've also cross-referenced the definition as part of the residential use classifications. Under two-family dwellings, this was Eric's suggestion that we include a condition for reducing the parking requirement based on a 300-foot radius survey. We've defined bicycle space, and then we've made some other very minor miscellaneous revisions based on commission feedback, little things here and there like changing a word or changing, just minor content. So with that, one of the big things that was discussed was parking maximums. This was in an earlier discussion, then of course, focus of the El Cerrito specific plan study session. So we looked at this and we also talked to our city attorney. And so in general, the parking provisions which exist in the zoning code provide a base minimum standard and legal threshold for development. The minimum requirement is established and codified in local regulations to institute a consistent development standard for projects throughout the city. And that a maximum standard is typically used to prevent new development from providing more parking than what is desired. Based on city attorney review, it was the conclusion that a maximum standard would be more appropriate to incorporate in a separate policy document, such as a specific plan, design guidelines, or overlay district, rather than in the municipal code. We also took this to Traffic and Safety for some preliminary review in May of this year. They gave us some helpful feedback as well and recommended some minor modifications related to long-term bicycle parking and refining that definition, defining bicycle rack space, and then other minor language tweaks to bike lockers, all of which have been incorporated in the latest draft. The proposed amendments are exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15061B3. And just as a point of reference, parking is not identified as a potential project impact in the CEQA checklist. And with that, we've provided you with a draft resolution, Reso 2017-05, which, if you adopt it tonight, would forward a recommendation to City Council to approve amendments to the parking regulations. And if you move forward, we anticipate taking this to the City Council after the recess, probably sometime in September or October.
Okay, so if we make some suggestions tonight, then probably they're the kind of thing that you would do, and then move it on to the council. That'd be
exactly.
That'd be our objective, rather than bring it back to us again for a
Right.
final proof thing. Okay.
Yeah, and it's in their strategic plan to get it done within the calendar year. I mean, that would be the optimal outcome.
Yeah, okay. All right, any other questions of staff?
And can you clarify when the Economic Development Group is doing some work, going to come up with some recommendations, and so how do some of the parking regulations we have in here relate to future recommendations that may have, particularly for Solano and San Pablo?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the Economic Development Plan is going to City Council this Monday, July 31st for adoption. Because it's more focused, obviously, on commercial infill, it's a little bit different, but they are recommending, some of the other changes to development standards in the zoning code, such as increasing building height, looking at more infill opportunities and that sort of thing. And there is a recommendation in there for a specific plan, something that could be done at a future date where I think, a lot of what you saw in El Cerrito's specific plan for San Pablo Avenue might also be considered for Albany's specific plan.
And specifically for parking, they didn't have a specific recommendation related to mixed-use parking?
The parking recommendations that they had to do with changing the timing on Solano, where we have the
Regulation of
90-minute
on-street.
zones going to a 2-hour zone, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But not for development parking? Not specifically if there's new retail going in?
Not specifically, yeah. It's at a pretty high level, so it hasn't gone that far into detail.
All right, thank you.
Okay, good. Other questions of staff? All right, let's see, open a public hearing. Anyone in the audience who'd like to address this item before us tonight? Maybe.
I just basically want to know what it is.
Better come up to the podium and state your name for the record.
My name is Harry Prine, owner of Solano Cleaning Center, 1219 Solano Avenue. I hear that you guys are proposing changing 90 minutes to 2 hours. That sounds good. Is there any talk about parking meters coming in?
So I'll just say this very, as properly as I can, no.
Thank you.
We get asked that question often, but I can tell you that as part of the residential survey that was done through our ACTC grant, through this, which is looking at residential parking ratios, we're not looking at paid parking at this time.
Yeah.
We fully understand that that's a bit of a Pandora's box, and that's not something
I was on the
pursuing.
first, back in early 90s, against parking meters. I was actually the treasurer for that, so it's kind of a bone we have. But what I am sticking around for is what will it take in order to get that concrete removed across the street?
Okay.
Or to open up 9 to 10 more potential parking spots?
Certainly not something that's on our agenda at this time. It's the first we've ever heard of it. Then even the notions come to us.
Well,
Can I
And
ask
probably it's not appropriate to come to us as the planning commission, I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
so just to give you a little
Mm-hmm.
context, that's something that would fall directly under the purview of the Traffic and Safety Commission, because they regulate the public right-of-way and public
I think
parking
that's right,
issues.
yeah. And-
They have their meeting in this room tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
All right. Okay.
when
I
does-
brought it up many a times. We talked about it the first time, the beautification. The second time we brought it up again was about 15 years ago when we went through this headache all over again.
The sewer replacement project.
Yeah, and they decided not to do anything about it because it would cost too much money. Really? When you jackhammer out all the concrete just to replace it and it costs too much money? I don't think so. So it's just like, Albany, wake up. There's things that are happening and we want to be so progressive, yet we think so backwards sometimes. It's like, come on, writing's on the wall. We spend, $14 million to remodel City Hall and it looks exactly the same. And there's no additional parking. So, just, I'll have to make a point to come to tomorrow's meeting then and bring it up.
Sure.
Thank you for your time and your good work. I appreciate it.
There'll be a public comment section of that meeting, just like there was at ours.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
you.
It also sounds like the item that goes to the City Council on Economic Development is coming up when?
Monday night.
So Monday night
Monday
sounds
night.
like another opportunity to speak to the City Council in the framework of economic development around Solano Avenue.
That would probably be a very good forum. That'd be good. Okay.
Sorry, one last thing, and can you clarify, he had mentioned on-street parking and regulations. This is about
This is about
development.
residential
This is
parking, so this is
residential.
off-street
This is
parking.
residential,
Not, what he mentioned is not in this that we're considering.
Correct.
Right, that's correct.
This is residential. Yep. Okay. So with that, then I'll close the public hearing. Okay.
Thank you for
Good.
coming.
Okay. And bring it back to the commission. Okay, so do people have small comments, big comments, typos? Where should we start? Go through it? What do you want to do?
I guess my biggest comment is I think there was a lot of good work in here, and I think we've made progress when we work to kind of, many of us move forward end-to-end. It's in the direction of what we're trying to do. But that said, I don't think I'm going to be able to support this. I mean, the key area I'm focused on is Solano and San Pablo. And I do think from a market perspective and trying to attract new development, I really think we should have parking maximums. I guess I agree with the city attorney's perspective that it's probably better within a specific plan framework.
Yeah.
But I mean, the city of Oakland did adopt their parking maximums, not part of a specific plan process. So it's not unheard of to do that.
That's right.
And I just think, given all the objectives and the vision we have for the city, it's something we really need to consider. So I'm not going to be able to support the overall package.
Okay. Okay. Other Detailed comments or general comments?
Well, I'm coming into this process late in the game, and I haven't been at the prior meetings when this has been considered or seen the other iterations. I can tell that there has been a lot of effort put into this, and so I'm not planning to, come in with a bunch of major substantive comments because I recognize that I'm late to the party. I am interested in seeing analysis of parking maximums. I don't think that the lack of parking maximums is a reason for me not to support addressing some of the other issues that, that this package is intended to address. I do have a number of nitpicky, but I think important comments, which I can march through now, or if anyone else wants to talk about more substantive comments, and we can come back.
I have a few comments of that nature myself.
Okay.
Chris, what's your thoughts?
I don't have much comment, but I'm not quite following the trend of the parking maximum. So explain to me what I missed here.
Well, it basically leaves it to the market, the developer, it's kind of more of a priority towards, I would call TDM types of investments. So you require a set of TDMs as part of the development. And again, the focus would be on our areas where we have good walkability already, you have shops, and you have some level of transit service. So I think in our land use code, it's primarily San Pablo and Solano Avenue and probably around El Cerrito Plaza. But, require a set of TDM type measures as part of the development, and then leave it to the market to decide how much parking to provide up to a certain amount. So I think, there are some people who are going to be willing to make a choice to live in a household that does not have a parking space. And the parking space in and of itself adds quite a burden in terms of cost to the overall cost of the housing project. And I just think we as a region in kind of key areas need to prioritize particularly housing development at a lower cost. So.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't dispute that at all, and I like the notion of the parking maximums. I think we should look at it, but I see this as a very much an incremental process, and I'm not ready to make that leap yet because I think it would require even more of a revision of the zoning code and the approach to the zoning code, all the tables in there and all of that, which have historically and are currently all looking at minimums. I wish we had the discussion, well, I wish a lot of things about Sprouts, but I think Sprouts is overparked, and we weren't talking about parking maximums then, and I think they came into us and got a lot of parking, thinking that they wanted to, deal with the biggest day of the year for their business, and that wasn't a good use of that land. So. And we might have been able to do it at that time because it was sort of a planned unit development, but that goes back historically anyway to the issues with the lawsuits on the EIR and having to start that whole process over again. So it's unfortunate. So anyway, I have a few little comments to make, and then I'm prepared to move on it.
I'm
Hope we
happy
can
to
move on.
receive
Okay.
the comments from both of you.
What do you?
You want me to go for it?
Sure.
Okay.
That'd be great. And I'll
So-
try to keep up with you here.
Okay. So section 2016-020, A3, I have two comments. One is that it currently says more than 2 or more dwelling units. Just get rid of or more. It should just say more than 2 dwelling units. I also would recommend that we either use the term multiple family or multifamily and use them consistently rather than toggling, which it currently does, because I think as a person who spends all day trying to figure out what ordinances mean, it makes it just it's like, why does it mean? What does it mean that they use different terms? So anyway,
I agree
just make it.
So would
Do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference. I'm totally agnostic.
Is it okay then to just go with multifamily, since that seems like more?
It rolls off the tongue more
It rolls off the tongue
easily.
better, for sure.
Yes. So then moving down to item 6 on the same page, the second sentence reads, "The facility may include but be limited to." You need a not in there. Include but not be limited to.
Got it, okay.
Let's see. Scroll down. Okay, my next one is on, gosh, what page is it? I guess it's page 5. K, bicycles. I think this just needs to be cleaned up a little. It currently says, shall be provided by, comma, new business establishments, comma, incorporated in new multifamily developments, et cetera. So I'm not exactly sure what the best way is to fix this, but I think it should say, shall be provided by, get rid of the comma, and then say new business establishments, new multifamily developments, et cetera, and get rid of that extra incorporated in.
I had the same comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Going down to R, I guess that's page 7. A transportation demand management plan. The city encourages transportation demand management plans are part of existing new multifamily residential, so I think it should be as. And then the last sentence, I think it should read, a TDM plan describes policies, programs, or resources. This is really nitpicky, but on table 4, page 8, I would either use the numeral or the word or both, but whatever it is, just do the same thing throughout the table. I also was wondering on this table, the notes describe the provisions to reduce parking for everything except single family. So I thought it would, I don't know if there was a reason for that or.
Yeah, there was some extensive discussion.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I think the commission ultimately came to the conclusion that they wanted to maintain the 2 parking spaces per single-family dwelling unit standard. They didn't have the appetite to change it at this time.
But, I mean, but there are still provisions to, I guess it's not reduce, it's to waive
Right,
those
there's the
parking
exception
spaces,
and
right?
reduction provisions are still in place.
Yeah.
Right.
This is just the standard requirement.
I guess I'm just curious why the notes tell you how you can reduce the parking for the other types of units, and they don't tell you, they don't refer to the provisions that already exist for reducing parking in single family.
I see the point that you're making. If we have the exception and reduction provisions on the book, but we don't have a cross-reference
So you
footnote.
could.
Yeah,
add
it's
a-
just a little
confusing.
cross-reference.
Yes, you
It's
could
not
add
a,
new
this isn't a,
footnote 1
Yeah.
referencing those code sections.
it's not a substantive comment
Yeah.
about whether those,
Yeah, I
No,
see
I
what
think,
you're
I
not,
think
but-
that's a good point, because then it makes
Yeah.
it more
it's more
I think
comprehensive.
it is too.
comprehensive, exactly.
Right.
It's a
Yeah,
good catch.
yeah. I mean, and we do have the letter from Ed Fields. We had the letter from Ed Fields saying, well, why don't you make them all one in single family? But we, in our discussions, didn't want to go that way because
Right.
because the single family in Albany has traditionally been too. But we'll just
Right.
work with the system we have now. It's a big deal, a big decision.
Yeah, no, understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just about the reference.
Yeah.
And I think that was my list. I'm not seeing anything else, so let's call it good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, I look at mine, I have very little. But let's see, if you're going to use the same staff report, you know, if you're going to copy it when you go to the council, the first sentence, there's something missing. with the recent voter passage of Measure N1, the commission review and make recommendations. So there's something, a clause got cut out there. So if you're going to, use this staff report as a template, clean that up. I understand what it was. Okay. And then, okay, on page 1 of, I guess it's 2016-020. Yeah, I think that's page 1 of the modifications. Under single-family dwelling, the word contained in the red lettering didn't quite fit for me. And I would say,
Would you,
a secondary residential unit may also be contained with a single-family dwelling. I would say associated with a single-family dwelling, or you might want to say constructed on the same lot as a single-family dwelling. One of the others there.
I think the intent
May
behind that
also be contained.
was actually citing it as physically part of the main structure.
Yeah. So this is a definition. So single-family dwelling is a
I
freestanding
think
structure.
maybe located might be.
A second may also be located, then you have to talk about on a lot. But so you can have a secondary residential unit in the main building.
So maybe we take that out and say within a single-family dwelling and maybe attached or detached.
Definition. Okay, maybe. Yeah. May also be, I don't know. I like associated with, so because a secondary residential unit is always on the same lot as a single-family dwelling.
Right.
I think, until you run into R2. Now, we didn't used to have R2 allowing secondary residential units, but now it does.
Yes, that's
Have to be
right.
careful about that. But you need some thought on that definition. So. And then on the next page, 8, secondary residential unit. On the second line, you use main home. And let's keep the language consistent with the other definitions. I would say primary structure, because you use structure for two-family, multifamily, and single-family.
Okay.
So I'd say maybe instead of main home, just say maybe change it to primary structure. I think that would work. Okay, and that's, then...
Can I make one other comment on
Yes.
8? Again, this is nitpicky, but it currently says units may be detached.
Right, oh, yeah.
Make that 2 words.
Oh, yeah, it's 2 words. Yep, you're right. 2 words there, okay. And then, okay, so Megan had to cover the next one I had, and I think that may be it. Let me see. I'm sure there's something, there must be something else. I think there was something else to bring up. Well, I don't see it. That's it. That looks like it. That's good.
Great. Yeah, if we can.
Very minor. Yeah, the only really important one was that definition of single family. I think that needs some more work. Okay. So I don't have any other further comments. Anyone else have further comments?
Well, I can't believe I found a couple typos these guys missed. But, Page 8, table 4.
Page 8? Table 4.
You're spelling out 1, then you have parentheses 1, and you do that with 2, 1.5, but then you miss a whole series of 0.5, 1, 0.5, 0.5, where you don't do that.
Yeah.
Just consistency, that's all.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it?
my big.
Okay.
All right.
Your big contribution.
All right.
Okay, then any other further discussion? Then let's have a motion. I'll be happy to move if no one else will, but what am I going to move on here?
It's Resolution 2017-05.
Pardon me?
It's Reso 2017-05.
Okay.
So we have it up on the
Resolution, yes,
screen.
I'll move approval of Resolution 2017-05, so that this can be passed on to the city council. Okay?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye, or opposed.
One opposed. Okay, 3-1. Okay.
Okay.
Now, that does go on to the city council, and we've done our work under Measure N here, so. Making, I'm really happy to see us be able to get out from under Measure D. And I'm really pleased about that. And I think this is a measured response. Maybe it doesn't go as far as Val would like. I know it doesn't. And it doesn't go as far as some people would like, who would like us to reduce the single-family residential parking or modify it or reduce it down to 1. But I think it's a good response, and I think it's in line with what the voters wanted us to do, which was to fix up the zoning code to get rid of Measure D. And I think this is a good response that will not be problematic for the city council. I hope not. So, good. Okay. That's that. Let's see. New business. There is no new business tonight. Announcements, communications, staff? Anything?
No announcements tonight.
No
other than
announcements,
to
communications
enjoy
tonight?
the recess.
You're going on vacation, I hope, huh?
I already went on vacation.
Oh, okay,
We went
good.
to Dubrovnik, Croatia
Oh.
in June.
Nice.
That was our
Good job.
That was our big trip.
We didn't see the slideshow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if any of you are Game of Thrones fans, but they filmed part of the show there.
Oh. Cool.
What part?
King's Landing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, that's all Dubrovnik.
Doug, can I mention one item of new business?
Sure.
With respect to a specific plan, it looks like MTC is supposed to have a call for, under their One Bay Area grant program, I believe starting in October is probably when the call comes out. I mean, Alita would probably know more. But they, in the past, typically have funded things like specific plans. I know in my job at BART, we do a lot of them with local governments. So there may be an opportunity coming up. You probably have to have some city match money.
Yeah,
And maybe there's other places.
This is ringing a bell. I think Alita had mentioned this, so thank you
That's
for the
good.
reminder.
That's good.
You know, related to that, this may be like a wild request, but I think, it would be really interesting if we were able to have a presentation at some point on the new
With Plan Bay Area?
Plan Bay Area.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is up for adoption tonight.
Okay.
Oh, tonight?
It's up for adoption tonight.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
They're
Is that
probably
right?
meeting as we
Adopted now?
speak.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It started at 7.
Wow. Okay.
Who's meeting, APEC?
Okay, the next meeting is September 13th. I will not be here for that meeting. I'll be in Scotland. I'll be in Scotland.
You're going to be where?
Scotland.
All right.
Yeah. Life is good. What can you do?
Are you bike riding, or are you?
No, walking. Walking, yeah. No. Walking tour, walking around, yeah.
Great.
Focus in 2 areas of Scotland over 2 weeks, yeah. Could be good.
What was the date on that one, Doug?
No, September 13th. I hope we have a quorum at that time.
we can check.
I should be here.
And that's our next meeting, so no meetings in August.
Yeah.
And so have a good little vacation, and with that, we're adjourned.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
It came up a few times today.
Really?